Hello and welcome back to another episode of HR Hacks and Halos, the podcast where we don't shy away from calling out the cracks in workplace culture and leadership while offering practical and empowering insights for HR professionals and business owners. I'm your host, Jivan Dempsey. I'm a HR consultant with over 20 years experience of delivering HR transformation and changing company culture through people, through process, and through technology. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different, and it comes in the form of an open letter to our very own Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and his UK front benches, the policymakers. Because honestly, if I were giving the UK government an end-of-year assessment for 2025, well, it wouldn't be a glowing report card. It would say things like, must try harder, inconsistent messaging, and most importantly, poor stakeholder management. So here goes. Dear UK government, I want to talk to you about change management. It's not just a corporate buzzword. It's a discipline, it's a mindset, and quite frankly, it's a lifeline when trying to lead people through complex shifts and change. And I should know, I've been supporting organizations through complex change for over 20 years. I know your intentions. You want to take the country forward and you want to repair the massive hole that we have in public finances. I get it. But whether you're reshaping welfare or you're slashing the winter fuel budgets or you're moving the goalposts on public services, you are effectively managing change. Or rather, you should be. And just like in business, when change is done badly, it creates confusion, it creates resistance, outrage, and ultimately failure. And I know that you've experienced that. And I think I'd be hard pressed to find anyone that would disagree. So, where did it all go wrong for you? Well, let me break this down for you. In 2024, you switched the winter fuel payment from a universal benefit to a means-tested one based only on pension credit eligibility. That was a decision made without public consultation or equality impact assessment. And as a consequence, it drew loads of legal challenges from many, many sources. Age UK warned that up to 2 million low-income pensioners, many of them that won't claim pensions credit, would miss out. And it triggered a really horrible eating or heating dilemma. You remember those press headlines, don't you? It was a cliff edge policy, and it demonstrated a real lack of empathy of people and their situation. Felt exclusion. Oh, good grief. What is that? Sorry about that. Let's just go back to, let's just rewind, please. So where did it all go wrong? Let me break it down for you. In July 2024, you switched the winter fuel payment from a universal benefit to a means-tested one based only on pension credit eligibility. And that was a decision made without public consultation or any equality impact assessment. And it drew legal challenges from many sources. Age UK warned that up to 2 million low-income pensioners, many of them not claiming pension credit, would miss out. And it triggered a dreadful set of headlines for you, a horrible eating or heating dilemma. It was also a cliff edge policy, and it showed a complete and utter lack of empathy. And that sudden exclusion, that cliff edge policy felt cruel and it felt rushed. And consequently, Mr. Prime Minister, you had a massive backlash from the public, your own MPs, charities, and even within the Labour Party itself. And the backlash meant a reactive U-turn, which damaged an awful lot of trust and your own finances. And then, of course, there was the welfare reforms. I mean, who could forget those? Your government rolled out proposed changes to PIP, to universal credit, and work capability assessment via a green paper. Crucial decisions were already embedded within that draft legislation, and critics were describing it as a done deal rather than a genuine consultation. And according to Learning Disability Today, over 30 major disability charities pointed out that documents weren't actually accessible. So no easy read versions for people with disabilities, no considered formats, which kind of claimed and showed a level of contempt really for disabled participants, a really school level error. Yeah, sorry, let's just start. I'm just going to start this whole thing all over again. It's just dreadful. Right, sorry. I'm going to start it from the very beginning. Forgive me. So, hello and welcome back to another episode of HR Hacks and Halos, the podcast where we don't shy away from calling out the cracks in workplace culture and leadership, and while offering practical and empowering insights for HR professionals and business owners. I'm your host, Jivan Dempsey. I'm a HR consultant with over 20 years' experience of delivering HR transformation and changing company culture through people, through process, and through technology. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different, and it comes in the form of an open letter to our very own PM, Keir Starmer, and his UK frontbenchers, i.e. the policymakers. Because honestly, if I were giving the UK government an end-of-year assessment for 2025, it certainly would not be a glowing report card. Say things like, must try harder, inconsistent messaging, and most importantly, poor stakeholder engagement and management. So here goes. Dear Prime Minister and UK government, I want to talk to you about change management because it's not just a corporate buzzword, it's a discipline. It's a mindset, and quite frankly, it's a lifeline when trying to lead people through complex change and shifts of thinking. I should know, as I've been supporting organisations through complex change for over 20 years. I understand and I know your intentions. You're wanting to take the country forward and repairing the massive hole that we have in our public finances. I get it. But whether you're reshaping welfare or you're slashing winter fuel budgets or moving the goalposts on public services, you are effectively managing change. Or rather, you should be. And just like in business, when change is done badly, it creates confusion, it creates resistance, outrage, and ultimately, and as we all know, failure. I would be hard pressed to find anyone that's going to disagree. So where did it go wrong for you, Prime Minister? Let me break this down for you. In July 2024, you switched the winter fuel payment from a universal benefit to a means-tested one only on pension credit eligibility. And it was a decision made with no public consultation or equality impact assessment. And you were drawing legal challenges from many sources. Age UK came out and warned that up to 2 million low-income pensioners, many of them that do not claim pensions credit, would therefore be missing out. And it triggered a dreadful set of headlines for you, eating or heating. It was also a cliff edge policy, which kind of demonstrated a real lack of empathy. And that exclusion felt really cruel and it felt really rushed. And as a consequence, you had a massive backlash, not just from the public, but also your own MPs, from charities, and also from within the Labour Party itself. And it meant that the backlash resulted in a reactive U-turn, which damaged trust in you and your frontbenchers, and also left a hole in those public finances that you were trying to sort out. And then there's the welfare reforms. Who can forget those? Your government rolled out proposed changes to PIP, universal credit, and work capability assessment via a green paper. What that meant is that crucial decisions were already embedded in that green paper in draft legislation. And critics were describing it as a done deal rather than a genuine consultation. And importantly, according to some major learning disability bodies, over 30 major disability charities pointed out that the documents that were being supplied weren't accessible. So there were no easy read versions, no considered formats for different types of abilities. And they were able to claim that this showed a height of contempt for disabled participants. We're living with an estimated 700,000 people living in poverty right now, and public, professional, and charitable voices such as Bernardo's, DPAC, Mind, they're warning of increasing hardship, rising in health rates, mental strain, homelessness, and even mortality rates increasing. And what did this do? Well, it led to the biggest revolt under your premiership, Mr. Prime Minister, and the biggest and the most embarrassing late stage amendments, staggered rollouts, and concessions that actually we've seen in a very, very long time. And the core problem remains that rushed program design, exclusion of key voices, and poor transparency. And the result? Well, you've lost financial credibility, you've done damage to your own reputation as a leader, and we're also warning and facing of tax hikes. And ultimately, you've saved far less money than the projected 50 to 180 million instead of the 1.5 billion that you were hoping for. Your fundamental error, Prime Minister? You didn't bring your stakeholders on the journey with you. I'm sure not everything in your policies was bad, and there's probably quite a lot of good in the reforms that you're championing, and also some good intentions. The fundamental flaw was you weren't explaining the why in a way that really resonated with the people, i.e., the electorate. You didn't prepare your own party and your backbenchers, and you certainly didn't anticipate the media backlash. Or perhaps you did, but you just didn't actually care enough to want to think about a contingency to deal with it. And you didn't honor the basic principle that transparency builds trust. And as a consequence, you've wasted so much of that initial goodwill that brought you into power in the first place. You can't bulldoze through change. The country wanted change, agreed, and still wants it. But they also want to understand what the change is, why that particular change, and the effect it's going to have on them. To have that debate and argument with you, to talk about it, to rationalize it, and then to be able to move forward. Not everyone is going to agree that the change you want for them and for the country is right for them. People will always consider change from their own perspective. That's natural, but change is hard. And that's why you invest in change management and certainly stakeholder engagement. You need that critical mass on your side who understand the reason for the change. They understand the reasons for why you're doing it, and then allowing that critical mass to become your champions, your goodwill ambassadors, for want of another phrase. And then they become your evangelists, spreading the word in their own homes, in the pubs and the cafes and the workplaces. Looking back, Prime Minister, what could you have done differently? Let me offer you a very, very simple checklist. First of all, understand who your stakeholders are. In this case, it's the public, charities, your own backbenchers, vulnerable groups, not just the people in your own inner circle or on your front bench or your important advisors, or in business, those board members, but everyone impacted by the change, not the ones actually driving the change. Think about the impact those changes is going to have on them and consult them before announcing things like means testing. Understand their interests, their fears and their motivations. It's going to go a long way to helping to mitigate against them. Consider perhaps a pilot or a phased policy to avoid any cliff edges. Make the change feel safe, not sudden. So scaffold those changes. Give people time to understand and to adapt. Communication is so important, and to communicate early and with empathy with all of the affected groups, not just the press releases. And you've done a lot of that. Invest in some two-way dialogue, listen, learn, adjust, explaining the why with empathy and with facts. The public, I'm sure, will stomach tough decisions if they feel respected and consulted and included. And I know that you are taking that on board, because I can see that happening now with the messaging around the potential tax increases or the wealth tax that's being mooted for possibly October's budget. But, whether you're talking about it now or you're not necessarily wanting to debate it, everyone's starting to talk about it. And it's kind of in a way preparing us, but it's also giving you an opportunity to monitor and adapt it in real time rather than just waiting for the backlash. It also gives you an opportunity to prepare contingency plans for any media and for any backbench escalation. Just don't make it up at the last minute like you did with the welfare reforms. Think about your risks, map them out and the responses, and prepare your own narrative. One of the things you didn't do was own the headlines. You stayed behind and you allowed everyone else, every other group, to be able to grab those headlines and stay really kind of attacking your own policies and pushing them back at you. It's important to stay human and actually making sure that you're up front and you're on the front foot with any of those responses so that you're owning the narrative. And you know what? Co-create wherever possible. Could you have involved other communities in designing the solutions? Perhaps even the backbenchers in shaping policy. Absolutely. They were the ones who were saying that they had been left out. They were the ones saying that they hadn't even met you. Perhaps hearing their voices as part of policy co-creation would have gone a long way and given you that goodwill so that you'd have had more people actually championing the change and understanding the change rather than fighting and resisting you. So let's move on. What can we business leaders and in HR learn from this? This isn't just a political critique of Labour in its first 12 months and, the reasons why some of the changes that are so important and critical to them have failed. This is a lesson for every CEO and HR director and transformation lead. Sorry. Just reverse back a little bit. This is a lesson for every CEO, HR director, transformation lead, or even founder. Whether you're restructuring a team or you're rolling out some new technology or you're merging departments, even redefining your culture and your values, we are managing change. And without stakeholder engagement, we will fail. Because here's the sobering statistic. We all know that up to 70% of change initiatives will fail. And the number one reason? Poor communication, lack of stakeholder engagement. Now, the source has always been attributed to people like McKinsey and the Harvard Business Review. And basically, any professional services that have kind of do any kind of audit on a major program, they will always come up with this 70% figure. So it is very, very real. So if you're listening and thinking, am I about to become the next government case study? Please don't panic. Here's a change management starter pack and best practice for business and HR leaders. Always start with your why. Always. Align the change to your vision, your purpose, or even your business survival. Map your stakeholders, whether those are internal and external. And by external, I mean your clients, your customers, the environment, even your competitors, even include the quiet ones. Assess the impact and influence. Who is going to be affected and who can influence your outcome? Communicate in layers, different messages for different audiences and tailored for different stages of the change. A one-size-fits-all approach will never work. Listen before you launch. Try piloting it, sense check it, co-create it. Make sure you've got your champions. Get your influence inside the business on board really early in the change. Make your invisible visible. What's wrong with showing your timelines and your milestones and giving regular updates on how you're getting on, and at the same time, acknowledge emotions. Change will bring grief, fear, excitement, all sorts of stuff. Make sure that you've got a safe space to allow people to be able to express those emotions and just acknowledge that those emotions will definitely come to the fore. Don't forget about celebrating your early adopters for change. Reward adaptability. But whatever you do, don't punish any resistors, but make time and effort to understand what's still holding them back and take time and give them the attention that they need in the space to start coming on board. Evaluate and evolve. Feedback loops matter. Continually monitor and check in on all of the things I've just talked about. Nothing should be a one and done here. Your change should be on constant review. So, a final thought from me, if you're in HR, you're a business leader, even Prime Minister, if you are still listening to me, I don't think anyone means to alienate people. I know that your good intentions, but they don't necessarily change bad outcomes. Whether you're in politics or business, how much sorry. Start again. So, a final thought from me, if you're in HR, you're a business leader, even perhaps if you're the Prime Minister and you're still listening to me, I don't think anyone means to alienate people through their change. But good intentions don't change bad outcomes. And in both politics and business, how you lead change matters just as much as what you are changing. Stakeholder engagement isn't fluffy HR stuff. It's the backbone of every successful transformation. And if you don't bring people with you, they'll just walk away from you. So please don't let your next project be another statistic. Be bold, be human, and build the bridge before you expect people to cross it. Yours sincerely, Jivan Dempsey, change leader for over 20 years. I said it was going to be slightly different. So thank you so much for tuning into HR Hacks and Halos. If this episode has sparked something for you, whether you're running the country, Prime Minister, and the UK government, or just trying to manage change in your team, we're not always going to get it right. But follow the checklist that we've just gone through in this episode to engage your stakeholders. Please hit subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone that's going to be changing. Hit subscribe. Just go back a minute. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's navigating change right now. And hey, Prime Minister Starmer, my DMs are open. So till next time, lead with purpose, communicate like you mean it, and always put people at the heart of change. Thank you again so much for listening to HR Hacks and Halos podcast. See you in the next one where I can share some more HR hacks and together we can polish some more HR halos. See ya.